The office was too quiet for a Wednesday night. The glow of my computer screen was the only light in the room, casting long shadows against the glass walls. I should have gone home hours ago, but I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut, the one that had been gnawing at me for weeks. Something wasn't right. 2 months earlier, I was promoted to senior auditor at City Hall. To everyone else, it looked like a win, a shiny new title, a bigger paycheck, and access to sensitive files no one else could touch. But promotions here weren't rewards. They were tests. At first it was subtle. Expense reports that didn't add up. Vendor invoices signed off without proper approval. Then the last week I found the memo, a confidential document buried deep in the system project budget reallocation approved. Do not circulate outside executive leadership. Millions redirected from public housing renovations to a consulting contract with a company I'd never heard of. When I asked my manager about it, he smiled too tightly. Don't worry about that, Joe. Focus on the reports we assigned you. But I couldn't stop worrying. Tonight I'd stayed late to run a trace on the company's registration. And there it was, a shell corporation. No employees, no physical address, just a P.O. box in Delaware. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. If this got out, heads would roll. If I stayed quiet, I'd be complicit. I stared at my phone. On my screen was the number for the Whistleblower hotline. I'd saved it weeks ago. Never thought I'd actually use it. My thumb hovered over call. That's when the elevator dinged. I froze. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. It was Frank, the deputy director. He didn't see me at first. He walked past humming to himself, then stopped abruptly when he caught sight of me through the glass. Joe, he said, his voice too smooth. Burning the midnight oil. I forced a smile, just clearing up some backlog. He stepped into the office, his eyes sweeping the screen behind me. You're a hard worker. That's why we trust you with the big stuff. Thanks. There was a pause. You know, Frank continued, this job isn't for everyone. Some people, they see things they don't understand and start asking questions they shouldn't. He leaned against the doorframe. You're not one of those people, are you, Joe? My mouth went dry. No, of course not. Good. His smile didn't reach his eyes. See you tomorrow. When he was gone, I shut down the computer, grabbed my bag and left. But as I walked to the parking garage, I couldn't shake his words. You're not one of those people, are you? Was that a warning or a threat? I sat in my car for a long time staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. If I made that call, there'd be no going back. People who blow the whistle don't get medals. They get demoted, blackballed, erased. But if I didn't, I thought of the families waiting for those housing renovations. The cracked ceilings, the mold. I thought of my father, how he worked 3 jobs and still came home smelling like drywall dust because he believed hard work made the world better. I picked up the phone and I dialed. The first sign was the silence. When I walked into the office the next morning, conversations cut off mid-sentence. Laughter faded as people glanced at me, then quickly looked away. At first I thought I was imagining it, but then came the whispers. Did you hear someone tipped off the watchdog office? They think it was him. By lunchtime, my inbox was suspiciously quiet. No meeting invites, no follow-up emails. The weekly audit review, the one I used to lead, went on without me. I found Jenna, my closest colleague, in the break room. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Was there a meeting this morning? I didn't get the invite. She hesitated. Yeah. They said it was just for senior leadership. I frowned. I'm senior leadership. Jenna looked down, stirring her coffee. Joe, I don't know what's going on, but you need to be careful. By Friday, it was obvious I was being frozen out. My access to key financial systems was temporarily suspended. When I asked IT about it, they just shrugged. Management's orders. That afternoon, I got an email from HR. Subject meeting request. Organizational restructuring. The HR office smelled like cheap air freshener and anxiety. Across the table sat Karen, the director of people operations, flanked by 2 silent observers with legal pads. Joe, thank you for coming in. She began, her tone overly sweet. As you know, we're going through a strategic realignment. I folded my hands. Cut to the chase. Karen's smile tightened. We've determined that your current role is Redundant. Redundant, I said flatly. Yes. Given recent changes, we believe we can distribute your responsibilities to other team members. I stared at her. This isn't about realignment. This is about retaliation. Joe, I assure you, don't. They handed me a packet labeled Separation Agreement. Inside was a generous severance offer. Generous but conditional. Page 7. A clause prohibiting any discussion of company operations with external parties. A gag order. You really expect me to sign this? I asked. Karen's expression didn't change. It's a standard agreement. I pushed the packet back across the table. I'm not signing. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at my phone. Blocked calls had started coming in. No one spoke. When I answered, just silence. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window. They're trying to erase you, a voice in my head whispered. I opened my laptop and searched for employment attorneys. Whistleblower retaliation. I didn't know what scared me more. The thought of fighting them, or the thought of what would happen if I didn't. The next morning I called a lawyer. The lawyer's office smelled of leather and old paper. Retaliation is hard to prove. Ms. Alvarez said, her glasses catching the light as she flipped through my folder. But you've got a paper trail. She tapped the separation agreement with its gag order clause. And this, it's gold. I sat rigid in the chair. So you think we can win? She leaned back, steepling her fingers. Joe, we might not win, but we can make them bleed. 2 weeks later, the lawsuit was filed. Joseph Macaluso vs. City Hall retaliation against Whistleblower. I expected silence, but the world noticed. By Monday, headlines screamed from every corner of the internet. City Hall employee claims retaliation after reporting fraud. Whistleblower punished lawsuit. Alleges culture of silence. My phone exploded. Blocked numbers, reporters, friends I hadn't heard from in years. Some were supportive. Good for you, Joe. About time someone stood up to them. Others were less kind. You've destroyed your career. Hope that lawsuit money's worth it. At the office, I felt the shift like a physical blow. People whispered as I passed. He's the one, right? Why didn't he just keep his mouth shut? But beneath the gossip, I caught something else in their voices. Fear. That afternoon, a knock at my door startled me. It was Jenna. She stepped inside quickly, glancing nervously down the hall. Joe, I saw the news. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. I had to come. Because it happened to me too. She sat on the edge of the chair, twisting her hands. Last year, I reported my supervisor for falsifying invoices. A month later, I was demoted. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. They said it was a restructuring. But I know better. I leaned forward. You're not alone, Jenna. Not anymore. By the end of the week, 3 more employees reached out. A janitor, an IT specialist, a project manager. Each with the same story. They spoke up. They were silenced. Ms. Alvarez's smile was thin, but fierce. They thought you were one man with one complaint, she said. Now you're a movement. City Hall fired back hard. These allegations are baseless. Mr. Macaluso is a disgruntled former employee seeking attention. But it was too late. The press was hungry for blood. Investigative journalists started digging. And what they found made my case look small. Emails, memos, years of financial mismanagement swept under expensive rugs. Late one night, I stood on my balcony, staring at the city skyline. I thought of my father again, how he taught me to finish what I started. This wasn't about me anymore. It was bigger. The next morning, Ms. Alvarez called. They want to talk settlement. The call came on a grey Thursday morning. Joe, they're ready to settle, Ms. Alvarez said. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the tension beneath it. They want to avoid more bad press, but they're only offering money. At first, I felt a flicker of relief. After months of whispers, blocked calls, and sleepless nights, I could walk away with a payout large enough to rebuild my life. But as I stared out the window at City Hall's gleaming facade, the flicker turned to anger. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about power. At the negotiation table, the city's lawyers wore smiles as sharp as their tailored suits. We're prepared to offer a generous settlement, the lead counsel said, sliding a folder across the polished wood. I didn't touch it. This isn't just about me, I said quietly. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. My client requires more than financial compensation, Ms. Alvarez cut in smoothly. We laid out the terms: mandatory whistleblower protection training for all management, a permanent reinstatement of the whistleblower office with oversight from an independent agency, public acknowledgement of retaliation, and a formal apology. The room fell silent. That's a big ask, the lawyer said finally. So was trying to erase me, I replied. 3 days later, they agreed. The headlines were everywhere. City Hall settles retaliation lawsuit, implements sweeping reforms. Whistleblower wins battle for systemic change. People called me brave, but I didn't feel brave. I felt steady. On my last day in the building, I packed my few belongings into a cardboard box. I passed Jenna in the hallway. They can't bury us anymore, she said softly. No, I agreed. They can't. Outside, the air smelled like rain and new beginnings. Marcus was waiting by the car. You ready to go? He asked. Not yet, I said. I turned back to look at the building one last time. They'd tried to make me disappear, tried to erase my name, my work, my voice. But instead, they erased their own illusion of invincibility. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, precise, a scalpel, not a hammer. And in the silence that follows, power shifts. They thought they could end me quietly. But in the end, I rewrote the rules and left them with the noise. Subscribe, leave a comment, and follow me to hear more incredible stories coming your way.